about the creative process and how it's really important to have the information you need in order to for creatives to do good work. I talk a lot about the fact that there are a lot of creatives that are decorators and they're very good at decorating, and then there are some times when someone just connects with the business owner or the marketing manager or whatever, and they just read minds. But for the most part, especially with big campaigns and big problems, high value problems, we need someone who can really research a problem and understand what we're dealing with and understand it really well. So it's kind of like in engineering. I did some research for my master's degree, and in that research, I really keyed in on the fact that in every industry there seems to be this problem of not being able to identify the problem you're trying to solve. And so you end up having in business they call it wicked problems, where they're just really hard to understand. They're nebulous. In engineering, it's called you end up with type 3 error, is what it's called, and it's when you are solving the wrong problem. And so it seems like in every discipline, people run into this issue. In advertising, we spend a lot of money to try to solve problems, and we spend a lot of money on media to try to convince people of different things, to try to educate them into hopefully educating them in truth, um, to get them to understand, hey, that our product or service offering is something that's going to make your life better. Well, in order to do that successfully, we really need to start understanding, exactly what um, we need to start understanding exactly what problem we're solving. And so if we so my example is this. I'm belaboring this point, but my example is this. You ask an interior decorator to go to design a living room, and so the decorator says, "Okay, great. Where is the living room so I can look at it, take measurements, get a visual, view of it, whatever." And and you tell them, well, it's not actually built yet. And they say, okay, well, maybe I can look at the blueprints and see, see what it's going to look like. And you say, well, the blueprints actually haven't been written up yet or drawn up yet, but it's a ranch style home, so use that as your kind of your example, and good luck, be creative, And so the problem with that obviously is that they don't know what kind of problem they're trying to solve. And the issue with communication is because we all think that the other person knows what we're talking about. And I think we try to get away with it. We wouldn't do that with an interior decorator, but we might do that in communication and advertising because, A, we think everybody sees things the way we see things. And, but the reason business partnerships fail is because both partners think, hey, the other guy's a reasonable guy. I can just go into this partnership, and we'll deal with who owns what later. And oh, I'm sure this guy's reasonable. I'm sure he won't want anything that I don't think is reasonable. And then the business ends, and they disagree on things, and they end up leaving enemies. And so it's everywhere. The fact that we do not really have an accurate view of what other people think a lot of times of situations. So if we're trying to solve a problem with communication, we need to be sure that other people understand what the problem is. Well, we have something to deal with that in advertising, and it's a strategy job that has a lot to do with research. It's a strategy job that does a lot of research, and it's called account planning. And the two sides of account planning are, one of them is research, getting insights from qualitative research, and then using quantitative data to back it up. The other part of it is strategy, and the strategy part is creating a theory of the problem. Now, if you think theory is kind of a weird word, and it's kind of like, ooh, theory doesn't work. Theory is only when you're trying to figure out things, and it's vague and everything. But anytime anybody does strategy, they're doing theory. If they're not doing theory, they're not doing strategy, because anytime you're doing strategy, you're projecting, you're trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future based on what's going on today and based on what you've seen happen in the past, and you create a theory of what's about to happen, right? And then you deal with that in your executions, right? So the theory, the strategy sets up the problem, and it sets up identifies the problem, and it sets up the executions. So theory. So theory is very important. It tells us basically, hey, given this, the logical conclusion is this, right? And that's theory. So so cool. So we have that person, and that person is called the strategist or the planner in advertising. But what if you get those planners to be able to understand what they do well enough? Because a lot of it's instinctual. But what if you can get those planners to understand planning well enough to be able to turn around and create planning, create that strategy, and lay the foundation for creativity in another company, say startups, say a bigger company that says, hey, we want to be creative and we're actually willing to put our money where our mouth is and we're going to invest in this. And I think I found a name for that person, and hopefully it hasn't been used yet. But the name I'm giving that person is a creativity architect. And the creativity architect is somebody who not only understands the creative process and understands how creatives work, but can do that planning role of research and strategy. But not only those things, but they can actually take that and apply it to a company. They can actually take it to another company or another organization, another team, and put that to work because they understand how leadership affects creativity, and so they can address that with leaders and help leaders get to a point where they're leading creativity well. Get them to micromanage less. Get them to understand exactly what their mission is. Things like that. Do that better. They also understand the creative process, so they understand what creatives need to be able to carry out their role, without telling them exactly what to do in the creative. And then they're able to establish some workflows that help put all this stuff together, right? So it's one thing to be able to help the leadership create a better culture. It's another thing to to understand the principles of a better culture. It's another thing to actually have to have the creatives coached and understanding their roles better. But that's a whole different thing to be able to put structure to it when the leaders are just now getting a hold of the the principles that they're trying to get a hold of, and the creatives are just kind of swimming around and getting new insights into what it means to be creative. It's a lot to ask those people to say, okay, now create a workflow for yourselves, and so you almost need to leave them with a workflow that's functional now, and that can be built on, it can be adjusted, because as they figure things out, they're going to stop obeying the rules of your workflow, right? And they're going to start saying, okay, well, let's evaluate that part of the workflow because it doesn't seem to be working as efficiently as we want it to. So they have the ability to address that, and they can actually come, with the creatives, they can all address that and actually create a better workflow, for their environment. And so that's what I'm calling a creativity architect, is somebody who is obsessive enough about that, right? Not like I'm describing myself at all, right? But someone who's obsessive about that, and you can actually put that to work in new environments and actually apply that in organizations ranging from advertising all the way to engineering, to education, all the way back to retail. I don't know. So that's my thinking, and I hope I've invented a new term. And if I haven't, maybe I'll have to play ball and just use